So, recently a lot of people have been asking me about how this specific background was made in the level swap with Woolsey and also Blee. And I have to say, this is pretty good looking. And you guys can see if you focus on the background, it looks like a Parallax background, and today we're gonna be recreating that. We're gonna do a cool parallax effect that you guys can replicate and use in your levels. And I'm also gonna make it so that you guys can choose your own pattern. So you don't have to use the exact same one, you can just use the style that you want. We're gonna go for like a spiky mountain because I believe that's what Blee used, which honestly looked pretty cool. And as always, my tutorials are always gonna be super duper beginner friendly, so you can just follow along step for step. Okay, so the very first thing you want to do is actually build the background, and we're going to do that using the slopes over here. So we're just going to place a bunch of slopes, just selecting them and then placing them like that. And then we're going to go here and then to this specific white block, hold shift and then just drag like that. If you're on phone, just click on swipe and then you can do that. But on PC, it's much simpler with the shift. Okay, so now what we could do is have it like that, but you can see that it doesn't look that cool. So what we want to do firstly is kind of make it a bit less repetitive. And to do that, we simply have to change where the midpoint is with these guys. So if we do something like that, it should look a lot cleaner, right? Or if you want to go even fancier, you can just like do these like that maybe. So to give it a bit more randomness, you can say. And we're just gonna like stack these like that. And you can see that all of them have the same exact height, which is, I don't really like that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and give some of them like a bit of a random height like that perhaps. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. This one maybe can also go down. And in case you see something like this, just select the slope, copy and paste, move right and then down. So right and then down. All right, cool. Now we have this thing. Now that you have a bunch, like 4, I would say it's safe to just start copying and pasting without people like realizing that it's copied and pasted. So I'm just gonna move this down a bit so that, yeah, this looks very cool. Okay, so this is gonna be the very foreground. So we have our foreground over here with 100 objects. I think I missed a slope, yeah. Also, you guys can hide the ground if you go to here, hide ground, or disable show ground. Okay, cool. So 140 objects and we have ourselves a foreground. Now you want to go to the next layer. Let's say we go to layer 1 and now we can just make a what is it called, like the layer that you would like to have behind this foreground. And the reason why we're using these layers is because we want to have our level very organized so that we can work with it a lot easier. And you guys are going to see exactly what I mean when we make about 2 to 3 more layers. So again, just do the simple stuff. And in here, I'm actually going to do a small little trick that I always do. And it's firstly to just actually making the background. That's like the first step. Something like that looks pretty cool. Now we're just going to copy and paste that and do this. Yeah, looks pretty nice. So now that we have the second layer, I'm just going to go ahead and click on this warping system in edit. And it's going to show me these points. And I'm just going to go ahead and move this anchor point down here. And then I'm just going to scale it up a bit. So now you guys can see that this is much, taller than the ones behind. Okay, so now let's actually just keep making the next layer. So I want this layer to be in the front and behind it should be this, and behind it we're gonna do one last one. So for that one, I'm thinking of using a different type of blocks. And you know what? We're going to use the particle system. And this one I think is going to be very cool because you can see it's going to animate. And I have made a full tutorial on the particle system, but let's just make it like a nice cloudy particle. So to do that, you just place the particle system, make sure it's selected, and then edit special. So now you guys can see this insanely giant menu. So you just want to go ahead and click on one and just start making this like, a square. If these values hit 50-50, that should be correct. It doesn't have to be exact, but just like that. And then you want to go to texture and just search yourself a cool texture. I like to use this one for the clouds, and you're going to see why in a bit. Now we want to make them a lot bigger, so we're going to make the size like that, and then we're going to add a variation to the start size as well. And we're also going to go ahead and go to extra, and start size is equal to end. Now what this means is that the starting size of the particles will be the same as the end one, so they're not going to change as soon as they spawn. So cool. Now what we want to do is, you guys can see that it just doesn't look smooth. It's too many particles, and it's just weird. So the first thing I would say, let's make it smoother. And to do that, we're going to go to extra and add a bit of fade in and also fade out. So this time the particles don't just instantly appear, but rather they kind of fade in and fade out like very smoothly. And we want to make them live a bit longer, so I'm just going to do 2 seconds with a random number of maybe 1. Doesn't have to be exact, you can just, you know, like surround with the numbers. And yeah, that looks cool. And now I'm actually going to increase this one, because we want to make sure that the values of these two combined are never larger than this one, otherwise it's going to lead to some issues. 0.6 and 0.6 is 1.2, which is less than 2, which is pretty good. Okay, so now we want to move the speed all the way to 0 so that they're kind of static. And now we want to just add a bit of random speed, and we can do that by just increasing this to a number like 10. And now each particle will have a speed of between -10 and +10, so it's going to give them this random movement, and I'm actually going to make them live a bit longer actually. And then I'm going to click on calc, and this time it's going to look a lot cooler. And we're also going to change the visual and then the start A, which stands for the starting alpha color channel of that particle. And we're just going to give them like a bit of randomness over here. And this should lead to this cool looking, you know, cloudy particle, which has 30 particles. You can adjust this if you want to. But yeah, I'm just going to place this like up there, because you guys can see that if this is in the background, you're only going to be able to see it if it's actually like kind of up. So now just copying and pasting this should do the job. Just select, copy and paste, select, copy and paste. And yeah, now you have a cool particle. Make sure to also select all of them. One thing I forgot, edit special, extra, and a quick start. What this is going to do is it's going to instantly start all of the particles as soon as you start. I'm actually just going to give it a try, and if we do boom, yeah, you guys can see that the particles are instantly there. Instead of having to like spawn like they do in here, you guys see that? How they kind of take a bit of time to show up. You want them to instantly be there. And yeah, I think this is, we're doing some pretty good progress. Okay, so now let's get to actually coloring our stuff and also adding the layering, because right now these layers are only for you, the creator, only for the editor. So they don't really affect how objects are seen in the game when you play. The layerings that matter in the game are actually in edit group and Z order, but we're gonna get to that in a bit. So first things first is you want to go to the 0th layer, select all of your foreground and give them a color. Let's say you want to give them number 8. People say, why don't I choose 1 or 2? I don't know, these guys are always reserved for me, so I just do 8. Okay, you can give it any number you want, so do 8 and then go to the next layer, select this one and then do 8 as well. And finally, to make these ones, you can't just go here and then do 8, because the particles take the color that you have selected in here. So if we make this red, you guys can see that now the particles are red, but we wanted to take the exact color of the color channel 8. So how do we do that? Well, we select all of the particles first of all, and then edit special, extra, and then use object color. And what this is going to do is, instead of using these two, it's actually going to use the colors that we assign it in here, which is exactly what we want. So now what we have done is, if we change the color channel 8 to a red color, for example, all of these are going to change to red. So if we select one of these objects, pretty much any of these, so then you can click on this thing over here, and then if you do move this up a bit, you guys can see that things are changing color, which just looks really, really cool. So now it doesn't look that great because you still can't see stuff. So we're actually going to have to layer it and also give them slightly different colors. And I'm also going to actually give it the same color that Blee did, which I think is a very cool color. Purple is one of my favorite colors. So now what we want to do is we want to make sure this is in the front, but we don't want it to be too much in the front because remember, this is a background. So if we have a level like that just playing normally, we don't want these guys, we don't want the background to be in front of the blocks that are actually like in our gameplay, right? So we don't want to do that. So in order to actually succeed with that, we want to select our first layer for the background and then edit group and then give it the Z layer of B5. And what this is going to do is going to put it far, far, far in the back. And the Z order is -7. So now you want to go to the next one, this one, make it B5. However, we want to make it behind, so -8. I think that makes a lot of sense. And now select all of these guys, B5, and this one has to be -9 because it should be behind everything. And now you guys can see that it looks pretty cool. However, this one has the same color as this one, so they're kind of overlapping. So to fix that, we're actually just gonna we're gonna select everything first of all, and then double click on this one, which is gonna release these sliders. And now you can just slightly change this color to the one that you like. And yeah, looks pretty cool. Okay, so now let's actually give the level a bit more atmosphere by actually like selecting a background. So I'm just gonna go ahead and select this one by going settings, background, and then that one. And we're gonna show the ground so we don't see the overlapping, the clipping of the thing. And then we're gonna select a ground. Let's choose this one. Click on this plus to actually give the background itself a cool color. I'm gonna give it like a dark one like that. And then the ground, I don't know, let's make it like dark and light red. Yeah, this looks phenomenal. Okay, so let's actually just start making the parallax effect. And we can do that by simply selecting our entire foreground, giving it a new group ID. So selecting it, edit group, next free, and then just click on add, which is going to add a new group ID to the selected objects. Now do this for the very foreground or the one after it. So this one, I'm going to give it 2, and those ones we're going to give them a 3. So now what you want to do is add a move trigger. So by adding move trigger, let's actually make this a classic again. And now we want to move 1. We want it to follow the camera. And now if we do the move time to 10, what this is going to do is basically move every object with the group ID of 1, which in our case is this entire foreground. Using this, it's gonna just lock it to the camera so that it just follows the movements of the camera. Now you guys can see that the foreground is following us, which is very, very cool. So now we want to actually adjust. We don't want to have the Y, by the way, just keep the X. We just want to slightly change this to maybe 0.9. Now you guys can see that it's not entirely following the camera, but it's actually just like a bit. Like there's a multiplier on it. This is pretty cool. Now that I think about it, I'm actually going to use a maybe 0.7. And now we're going to copy and paste. Actually, before we copy and paste it, we want to click on the trigger, edit object, and let's make the move time -1, which is an infinite cheat of saying infinite. A secret cheat code of saying infinite instead of having to like put 9999, which is not even infinite. So -1 is going to make the same thing, but it's going to happen forever. So copying and pasting this trigger, just move it up. And we want to do 2. And this time we're going to do 0.8. And let's do 3 as well, and 0.9. So now you guys can see that the background that's far behind is actually moving a lot slower than this one. And you can adjust the values as you want. So I'm just going to do 0.6, and this one maybe 0.78. I think that should be good. And this one 0.9 might be good. Yeah, so now you guys can see that you can pretty much like set the distance that you want between these backgrounds. And yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. So now we have our parallax thing, but the background doesn't look that good. And that's because it doesn't have any shadings. And the shadings are actually some of the most important things to add in a background to make it look cool. So to do that, we're just going to go ahead and go to the first layer of the first background, and we're actually going to use these guys. These guys are going to make it look so much better. So you want to just add it and then make it like really big, and just go ahead and just place it right on there. And then we want to make it on B5. And yeah, let's just do this. If this is -7, we want it to be not -7, but -6, because we want it to be on top of these guys. So now you want to click on edit object and then give it the color channel of 3. And by clicking over here, you can make it black and the opacity should be around 0.2. So now you guys can see that it looks a lot better, but we can still spice it up even more. And to do that, we're actually going to use this one now. We're going to like rotate it, make it really big as always. And now we're gonna simply select the one that we previously added and hold up. I'm just gonna move this like that. And then you wanna click on copy values and then select the new one that you added and click on paste values and also paste color. What it's gonna do is this new object that we added, it has now the same values that we entered for that one, which is pretty cool. You don't have to manually do that. That's pretty nice. So now if you place it in here, you can see that it's starting to look a bit better, but it's a bit weird as well. So to make it less weird, we're just gonna go ahead and click on the warp. And we're gonna place the anchor point all the way at the center like that. And we're simply gonna change this to something like that. And now you guys can see that it's starting to look more 3D. So copy and paste it, flip it, and then move it over like so. And now you wanna give it a new color, let's say 2. And then you wanna make it blending, white, and 0.35 opacity. And you also want to make it on B4 now because we were using blending. So now you guys can see that the background just looks a lot cleaner. Just adds a lot of depth to it, which is pretty cool. So now we're just gonna copy and paste all of these guys and just place them in there. So to do that, there's actually a trick so you don't have to like manually select them, which is pretty weird. So you want to select one of them and then go to here and make sure that your select filter is enabled. And then you want to go to delete, click on this one, and then just select. And what this is going to do is select every single object that is exactly the same as this one. We're just going to move this up a bit and then select the second object and then do this one and then that one and then move it up. So now we have our 3 shadows and now we can just copy and paste them like that. Just place them like so. Oh my god, this actually is starting to look really nice. You guys can see that just adding these, you know, cool shading effects, which literally only took us like 3 objects per what is it called, like one height or one bouncy thing. So now you'll make sure that all of them also have the group ID of 1 so that they also like move with the background. This looks phenomenal, look really cool. But we're gonna spice this up even more, dude. Like, you guys have no clue. This is just the beginning, and I'm so sure that every single cool level used to look like garbage in the past, but they just kept spicing it up until it looked really cool. Okay, so what I did now is just pasting it on this layer, on the new one, because I already had it copied. So now we want to move it to the tip of the iceberg, if you want to call it that, and then move the anchor point all the way up with the warping system. And now we want to kind of move it down until this line lines up with the mountain. So you guys can see that like that should be pretty perfect. Nice. Okay, now we want to make sure that this actually has the group ID of 2, and now you can just copy and paste it and just place it over these guys, and it should be the same. Why? Because what we have done is basically just do a background and then just scale it on the Y a lot, and by just copying and pasting those, it should always match. So now, oh my god, this is honestly looking phenomenal, really cool. Okay, so we have added shadings to our beautiful background. So now it's actually time to just keep spicing it up. And one thing I noticed is that these particles look not that very cool. And the reason for that is because they're not on blending. So to make them on blending, it's quite simple. You want to select all of them and then click on edit object. Give them a new color, 9 on both base and detail. And then make sure that color 9 copies color 8, but is blending. And what this is going to do is just make all of the particles have the same color, but they're now blending, and it looks pretty cool. And now what we're gonna do is just enable the ground again, and we're gonna add a gradient thing, and that's gonna be very cool. You guys, okay, before we do that, I actually saw this problem with the shading where you can see that this shadow of the darker purple is actually on top of the foreground. So what we're gonna do is select all of these guys and just bring them to B4. However, now you guys can see that the white ones that we added are actually behind. So we're just going to do this, and we're going to select this one and do 2. What this is going to do is just select the objects that have the color channel of 2. So now if you select, it should only select these guys, which is perfect. So now click on delete, so that it actually goes back to none, and these values are 0, so you can just select anything you want again. And then edit group and make them B3 now. And now you guys can see that the issue is fixed. And this is actually also important for our gradient trigger that we're going to add. So add a gradient trigger and edit object, give it 2 colors. So 5 is going to be black and blending, and detail, let's say you give it 6. Actually, let's do 9, the same color that we just did for the particles. And now you guys can see that we have a cool thing going on, and this already looks very, very nice. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna rotate this like that, and we're gonna go to edit special and make it additive. And what this is gonna do is create this cool like additive thing that you guys are seeing, and we're gonna make it so that it's on B5, so this way the gradient only applies behind there. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna limit this gradient by adding any object you want. So I'm just gonna add these lines, so here and there, and then we're gonna have to give the bottom one a new group ID like so, 4, and this one has to be 5. And then you go to the gradient, and then down was 4, up was 5. So like that. And now if you move these guys, you guys should see that there's this cool thing. And now what we're gonna do is I'm actually gonna change, instead of 9, I'm gonna use 4 and make 4 black. And also get rid of the blending and just make it normal. And now you guys can see that it's completely black, and that's because our first color channel has to actually have 0 opacity. So we're just gonna give it like 7 and make 7 black, blending like 0 opacity. And now you guys can see that it just creates this really cool like black stuff, like gradient thing. And now what you guys can do is go to here, just select this one, go to there, and then click on 2 and just adjust this as you want. And you can also adjust the positions of these as you want. So like that looks pretty cool. And now it's gonna copy and paste this gradient, go to edit special, give it a new ID. This is very important. And I'm just gonna remove the up. I just want to have the down. And now we're gonna give it 9 and 5. And we're gonna rotate it so that the purple is down there. And we're gonna give it additive, so that we're gonna make it in the background as well. And now you guys can see that there's this cool like additive effect, and you can adjust the values if you just double click here and change the brightness like so. It looks pretty cool. And I'm actually just gonna go ahead and go to this layer, and I'm just gonna add some random stuff on top of it. Let's say we add this icon, copy values, and then we paste the values on the icon and also the color, and we just place it up there, maybe a bit more saturation and brightness. And yeah, I'm just gonna place this like randomly just to show that there's just something going on there. And now you guys can see that the icon is always there, which kind of looks pretty cool. Okay, so now I also want to change the background speed by using this, not this one, background speed. So by default it's that. I want to make it perhaps 1.5. Yeah, no, it's too fast. 1.1 perhaps. It's too fast. Let's do 0. Let's do 0. If this one was 0.6, I mean, this one was 0.9, this one was 0.6, so it has to be 0. Also, the Y doesn't really matter. The X has to be 0. Let's do 0.54. Actually, I think 0.1. Just adjust these values and see what looks good. You can also hide the grid by going here so that you can actually see what's going on. Yeah, this looks a lot better. And also you can choose a different background if you want to. Ooh, this one looks really cool. Wow, that one, yeah, I'm gonna choose that one. It fits really well with the clouds. Also, regarding the clouds, I'm just gonna select all of them, give them a larger osvar, and also we're just gonna move them down by 1 like that. So now you guys can see that they look pretty cool. Okay, so what's the last thing we're gonna do? It's going to be just adding some nice snow particles. We're just gonna add a particle in here. We're gonna copy the values of any one of these, paste it on the particle, and edit special. And we're gonna make this a really big texture. And then we're gonna go, let's go for the snow, this one. And then we're gonna make it big. And then we're gonna make it even bigger using this one. And then we're gonna make the snow fall to the left bottom like that, maybe a bit more. Yeah, actually like that looks pretty cool. So the speed we're gonna do, actually let's do the speed like that. Click on 3 and then drag this down here. And I think then we don't really need that much gravity. Yeah, like that looks pretty cool. The angle, this one, just move it all the way to 0. And make sure that you enable this one so that they don't change the size too much. Just bring these guys to 0. And add a bit of end spin randomness so that they kind of spin a bit, which looks pretty cool. Okay, so now we want to make them a bit slower, and we want to make it so they live for like 5 seconds. And a bit more, we want to add a bit of more of these guys, just random values. And we're going to make it copy the object color. And we're going to make it 8 and 9. And actually, we're going to make it only 8. And we're going to double click on this one. Make the brightness high and this one like that. Make it like really kind of almost white, like so. And actually, that's a bit too fast. So I'm going to do even lower speed. We're going to do fade in and fade out, of course, for the smoothness. And now you guys can see that by adding quick start as well, now we have created a cool looking particle. And what we're gonna do is just bring this to like 250, and now they should spawn on a much bigger rate. I feel like this one is a bit too much. So like that looks pretty cool. You can bring it onto B4 so that they kind of go in between, which I think is also pretty cool. However, I still think it's a bit too big. Yeah, now it looks a lot better. So edit special, and the final thing, I'm just gonna make this a bit bigger, like 300. Also a bit of Y pulse variation, and I think that should do the job. So what we're gonna do as well is make sure that it has 2, and also go to extra and make it relative. And what this is gonna do is basically just, actually, that's not a good idea. Let's just make sure that it's grouped. So never mind on that last one. And yeah, I don't know what to say, but I think this looks pretty phenomenal. And you guys can see that the background ends at one point, which is not that very cool. So if you want to use this background for just a bit, you can just copy and paste everything and just like place them in there. Maybe delete some of these guys and kind of overlap them like that. Looks pretty cool. Just make sure that you don't forget any of these shadings, and yeah, just copy and paste those and it should be. I'm also gonna make these guys kind of fly up a bit so that it kind of feels like it's smoke coming out. You guys know what I'm saying? Like that. This one has to be 0 so that it kind of go up like so. Yeah, a bit more there, like that. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Maybe they are a bit too fast, so let's do this one at 3, this one at 5. I think that should be a good value. Also, this one is a bit too big, that one is a bit too big. And yeah, it's just all comes down to like playing around with some of the values. And yeah, I still feel like it should be a bit, this one should be a bit more like that. Fade in, fade out all the way to the max. And yeah, I think this looks pretty cool, right? Okay, so just to finally, I'm just gonna copy and paste this one to there. And by the way, clicking F4 on your keyboard is gonna show these particles. And if you're on phone, click here, there, right, and hide particle icons, and you can see the particle icons there. Looks very, very cool. Now, if you have ended this whole thing and you want to transition to the next part, what you can do is select all of these guys, give them a new group ID like 6, and then make sure that you add a stop trigger like here, and then just assign it to 6. Now, as soon as you reach this point in here, it's going to stop. So also this one and that one, what you can do to disable them is just place another gradient trigger and also edit special and disable all. And you guys can see that as soon as I reach this point, it's going to go back to normal. And if you want to change the background speed back, you can just copy this one and just bring it back to its original value. But yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And yeah, let's just give it a try in normal mode, because there's going to be an issue. And I'm gonna also address that. So if you go to normal mode, you guys can see that there's this weird stuff going on where basically like every object once it reaches like the edge of the screen, if you just focus on this icon, for example, up left, you can see that it's slowly fading out, which is not that very cool. So to fix that, you can either use this one at the very beginning, which is going to disable every fade in and fade out and enter in and enter out for every single object, or you can select everything that you have and edit group extra and don't enter and don't fade, and that should look pretty cool. And now if we just click on play, we should have a yeah, that looks pretty cool. I'm also gonna like add a bit of zoom out just to actually see how this looks like with a bit of easing. So now you guys can see, oh my god, this actually looks pretty cool. Okay, I'm also gonna move this one a bit more to the right so that we don't get, it doesn't annoy us while we do this amazing showcase. So if you guys liked it so far, don't forget to slap that like and also subscribe, and I will see you guys in one of my next tutorials. I hope you like this, subscribe and also like, and I will see you guys in the next tutorial.